Welcome back, friends. My guest today is my very good friend, Mark Jeffery, radio broadcasting extraordinaire, an actor, and works in social and community advocacy. Raise your glasses and please welcome Mark Jeffery.
G'day there, Matt.
How are you?
Oh, I'm all right. Been recovering a little bit from COVID.
You got the C word.
Yeah, I know. I was calling it the big C, but the big C's cancer, so I guess it's the lowercase, or the medium case C.
Yeah, I guess that's,
Or the C of a C, I'm not sure. But yeah, doing all right. A bit flat and tired, and sometimes you get COVID brain and you're halfway through saying something and you get to the end of the sentence and you're thinking, what was I going to say?
Yeah.
What did I start off with the intention of saying in this sentence?
It just wafters off into nothingness.
We usually try and make something up to make sense of ourselves.
Yeah, that's right.
So it is COVID folk. It's not having too many of these Peronis.
Yeah, not yet anyway.
Not yet.
You were telling me just before that you had a little bit of a break from the booze.
I did. I think I had 7 out of 10 days alcohol-free over COVID, and even since then, used to be you'd have 2 or 3, and it's been a bit more alcohol-free days at the moment.
Oh, that's good.
It's good, and even sort of not feeling like it, which must have been sick.
Yeah, that's all right.
I don't know, 7 alcohol-free days in 10. That hasn't happened since, what was I, maybe 6 or 8? No. I actually didn't start drinking till I was quite late. Yeah, well into my 20s.
Really?
Yeah, I was a good boy. Yeah.
Wow.
And then I met you, and
oh, okay, here we go.
No, I can't blame you. I think it was getting a real job and having money to be able to afford to do it, to drink. Maybe that. Was.
Yeah, exactly. So you didn't go through the teenage kind of.
No, I was a good Christian Baptist boy.
Yeah, right.
Yep. No sex, no drugs, no drink, no. Yep.
None of the fun stuff. All of the guilt.
No, well, I wasn't Catholic, so lots of prayer and Bible studies and.
Sounds fucking amazing.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun, also a lot of hang-ups, but
Yeah.
we got over that, making up for lost time.
Yeah, that's right, exactly. Yeah. Oh, maybe it's good to have COVID to remind you of your roots, of having a break.
Or lack of.
Lack of, yeah, true. Yeah. Yeah. And how's radio life treating you?
Well, sort of my career's been bouncing backwards and forwards with working in radio and mainstream media, and then working for not-for-profit groups to get to raise awareness of issues in media. So I'm on these work with mainstream. So I work with not-for-profits at the moment to get issues. So I moved back into that area about 2.5 years ago. I was with the ABC for 7 years, and then for 7 years before that was with not-for-profits. So, not doing a lot of radio at the moment, apart from arranging interviews for my boss and everybody else, getting them on it.
Yeah.
I still love it, still want to get back in and keep it a bit on the side and keep doing it, but just not quite sure how that'll happen. Yeah. Because I love it. It's in my blood. I started doing it when I was 12.
Yeah, I remember you telling me on a community...
station in Alice Springs.
In Alice Springs, yeah.
Yeah, before my voice broke. It sounded like a chipmunk.
G'day everyone, this is Mark Jeffery.
Yeah, actually, I can probably play a sample of it if you want.
Oh, that'd be awesome. Yeah, we do.
Myself over the back door neighbour, we used to do it. My mum actually worked in taking the ticket gates for the rugby union in Alice Springs, and there was a community college attached to it that had a radio station, and they used to come through the gate and let him for free because they weren't going to see the rugby. And eventually they said, "Oh, you can do a show if you want." And we said, "Oh, okay, yeah, we did." So cool. Mum knew the manager a bit, and the rest is history, I suppose. Nick sort of, here we go. I've got a little bit of it here, I think.
On the 31st of May at Anzac Oval, there is going to be rugby.
I think that's Nick.
The first game at 12:30
I'll
is
be
Telford
next.
Memorial versus Stuart Arms. Next we shall have Slim Dusty with Lights On.
So you don't get to listen to the whole of Slim.
Sound of the City is next by David London.
Yeah, so there we go. That was there might be the intro here somewhere.
Here's a tribute to John Lennon, his Jealous Guy by Roxy Music.
There you go.
That's brilliant.
Age 12.
Mark Jeffery at his peak, maybe? No, hopefully not.
No, I think I might have. I did go back to Alice Springs in my last 7-year stint back at the ABC and worked there for 15 months as an adult. with a voice that had broken. Presented a lot of radio there then.
I came and visited you there for a
That's
bit.
right,
And
you did, yeah.
you showed me around the studio there.
Oh, I forgot about
Alice,
that, yeah. You did the road trip down the centre.
Yeah, that was great fun.
Plus had you on radio when I was doing queer radio on Triple Z as well.
A couple of times.
With Something Whiskey.
Yep.
Yeah.
That was
In fact,
great.
we premiered many a single of yours on
You did.
worldwide release on Triple Z.
On Triple Z.
On queer radio.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you weren't even,
Both of the listeners loved it.
and you weren't even 100% queer then.
No, exactly. That's right.
I don't know what percentage. We'll let you decide on that.
About 6%, 7%.
Yes, that translates to, yep. There's an empirical measurement for that somewhere, isn't there? A metric conversion on some phones.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. What would be your favourite part? Because you've worn many hats within radio in terms of interviewing, production or producing, sort of like DJing, or what do you call that? Like,
Well, I guess in music-based stations, it's DJing. But if I've mostly done. I mean, I've done a little bit of music-based radio, but usually it's information programming, ABC and current affairs, news, that kind of thing. So that's more presenting, interviewing as a presenter. I really enjoy that, particularly when you get some great guests and interviewed some fantastic people. And I didn't quite interview the Dalai Lama, but went out to Uluru when he was there with a big trip and interviewed him. Just missed out on interviewing Peter Garrett. Would have loved to, because he's got a great story.
yeah.
Dalai Lama was funny. We were recording stuff and they asked him if he liked the Aboriginal and Indigenous culture, and did he like the witchetty grub? He says, "Oh, I do not like the worm. I fear it might be my ancestor."
Really?
So taking the joke out of the concept, reincarnation, and all the rest of it. So I think in interviewing people and bringing out strong stories.
Yeah.
When I was in Townsville with the Townsville floods and interviewed some friends that were cleaning up their house. It was a high rise, but the bottom half had flooded, and it was a big job. So, and that was a great interview. I won an award for that one. I loved it, and they were just.
That's cool.
Their,
Congratulations. I didn't realise.
Yeah, there were tears and mosquitoes and humour, and they said they found a dead barramundi in the pool, but they wouldn't eat it because it was missing its eyes and parts of its other body parts.
So something else had already had a go.
And they came out with the error guard part way through because I was slapping myself with mosquitoes.
Oh, yeah.
So I think that's probably the favourite part is not interviewing famous people because they're famous, but because they've got a good story usually.
Yeah, sure. I can appreciate that because the reason that I've started doing this podcast is because I love talking with people, particularly those that have a story. I do believe that everyone's got a story, but just some people have a better story.
And I one of your famous people.
You're exactly. That's right. But yeah, hearing people's story and just getting to chat with them and have a beer and or water, or it doesn't really matter. But I'll be having beer at the very least, and a whiskey soon if you want one.
It looks good. Yep.
Yeah, it is good.
My brand. Well, my flavour.
Yeah.
Scotch whiskey. I don't think I've really drunk beer and whiskey doing much radio before.
No.
Although I used to do it before. Having a great time. It's just community radio days, not ABC. And then you'd come back and listen to it, and you thought, I'm not making any sense at all.
Yeah.
I did make sense to myself at the time, so I thought,
Yeah.
with the other person. So after that, I thought, okay, we better stick to, because it was radio that was late, like 8, 9 o'clock at night. So, so after that, it's like, right, 3 only, no more.
Yeah. Well, I remember the first time that I was on your show on the Zeds with Mike. And I was very drunk. So, but I remember listening back to it, like, I guess it was just when it was on air, because it was pre-recorded, but not by very much, I don't think. Not a lot of time.
I think it might have been it would have been live, but it might have been the podcast you were listening back to, perhaps.
Oh, okay. Yeah, right, okay. Oh, okay, so it was live. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
But either way, when I listened back to it, I remember thinking, like, I know that I was drunk, so but do I sound drunk? Do you know what I mean? Because I know that I was drunk, but maybe I don't actually sound all that bad to someone who doesn't know what I normally sound like.
Well, you must have pulled it off much better than I did. Not that night, but some other previous nights. But we we soon cleaned up our act and
Yeah.
became consummate professionals.
And then you thought, like this, I'm going back to not-for-profit.
Well, it's funny because I like working with not-for-profits because, and doing advocacy and community service stuff because it's long term. It's not here today, gone tomorrow. It's stuff you work on over a long term. But you know, after a while, you get sick of that because you want to go home and switch off and not have stuff to keep going with.
Sure.
So that's great. Then you can go in and do radio for a while. So at the end of the day, you're finished. You don't have to bring your work home with you. Sometimes a news story might run on for a few days at a time. You know, sometimes you get calls at home preparing for the next day, but really it's when you're at work, you do it. When you're at home,
You don't.
So that's good. But then after a while, you get sick of that because you think, oh, you know, I want to do something that has an impact. And, and it's
has
not
more
here
meaning.
today, gone tomorrow. So I sort of vacillate between the two. So I'm sure after, it's coming up 3 years back here, after 4 years, another 4 years, I might have enough and I want to go back.
Yeah.
Plus it's also, you know, job satisfaction and finding somewhere that pays well and has good conditions and good people to work with and all of that. So
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, ticking all of those boxes can be difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and particularly as you get older. You know, when you're younger, you're a lot more enthusiastic and energetic and want to change the world and bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and all of that. As you get older, you think it's just a challenge to get up in the morning. And even if you haven't been drinking the day before, it's just,
and if you have, it's, oh man, like hangovers now, just, if it's a decent hangover, it wipes me out for a minimum of 1 day. Minimum. Just totally wipes me out. Like it becomes a waste of a day. I try not to get to that point too many times. I'd be lying if I said I don't do that anymore, but I try to limit how often I do it.
Yeah. Only once a day, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, if you do it every second day.
Yeah. No, I wouldn't do that anymore. But even, it's just, life. I never thought I'd say this, but life just gets tiring.
Yeah.
And you got to make sure you don't groan and grunt so much when you stand up or get out of a chair or out of the car.
Make those old man noises.
That's it. It's like I'm making those old man noises. I'm only, what am I, 53. But that's life. So I think as you go on, you feel a little bit, it's you just want to be able to do something that you enjoy for the day. You know, I guess you've given up on being Prime Minister or wanting to change the world or, you know, maybe think, well, I already have in some ways, so we just scale it back and take it bit by bit. And also maybe focus on the personal things. You know, there's more personal things you want to do in personal relationships and in family and friends and
exactly.
and things like that. I think they become a bigger priority.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely find that for myself, put it this way, I used to be more interested in money than in what I did. Yeah. And now I'm much more interested in what I do. Yeah. And even if it means that I don't earn as much as what I could, because I want to enjoy what I'm doing as best I can. And the thing that's really important to me is my time. You know, to do other things that have nothing to do with earning money, that are to do with spending money or not spending money. But, you know, whether that be just working around the house or in my veggie garden or doing this podcast or going out for dinner or lunch or something like that, that's more important to me than chasing it, like than only chasing a job for the sake of money. But that being said, I mean, if someone wants to pay me a heap of money to do what I like to do, well, then obviously I'm going to take it.
I think also in my teenage years and 20s and 30s, I was, very ambitious and wanting to, all the change the world stuff at the time when my friends were sort of getting mortgages and sorting out relationships and things like that. Whereas I'm doing that now, I think. Yeah. I'm doing the mortgage and the relationship and the gardening and all of those things, which, you know, I have done in part, but I guess they were more of a focus for the friends and my contemporaries back then. Yeah. Yeah. And now they're all going through it again, maybe on their second relationships or whatever else. Yeah. But yeah, that's right. Just different perspectives and priorities for different people, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And but overall, you find that you're quite happy and content with what you do. You're like
Oh,
personal
absolutely,
life,
yeah.
your work life, your social balance, your work life
I mean,
balance.
the work's great. There's some really good stuff that we work with. I work mostly in the area of child safety and child protection.
Yeah.
Not at the coalface, but for a peak body. So all of our member organisations are involved in that. So it's been doing things like, because kids that come through those systems are usually with foster parents or kinship carers. They're not with their own parents, so it's a big challenge for them, particularly once they turn sort of 18, 19.
Yeah.
And then the system drops them, I guess. But we've been working really hard with governments, particularly state government, to try and extend the age of care and making them realise when you turn 18, your parents don't kick you out of home, or some do earlier,
Yeah.
or some of us haven't had that all the way through, but the average person doesn't. So we've been working hard at getting government to extend that support through to 21, and they've sort of just come through with that this year.
Oh, good.
And it's great when you see the effect that has, particularly on children in the foster care system. Once they hit the teenage years, it's really hard to be placed in a family, and that care through until their early adult years, when they're trying to negotiate jobs or careers or university and all the rest of it, is just as important during the
Of course.
the adolescent or the younger years. So when you see things like that happen, and the doing advocacy on that, and telling people's story, and saying that's just really satisfying when that stuff comes out. So that's really good when you work in that space.
Yeah.
And also one thing, rather controversially, in most parts of Australia, you can be jailed as young as 10.
10 years old.
Yeah, it's a thing called the age of criminal responsibility. It's where it says the age that you're aware of the consequences of your actions. So we're saying Australia is committed to international convention which says 14 is the reasonable age. Even then, it's still bloody
very young.
But it's saying raise the age of criminal responsibility from 10 to 14. But of course, that's quite controversial because you have a lot of, pay the crime, do the time, and a whole stack of strong people that are advocating and saying juvenile crime is rampant. We need to have people in that in jails when they're 10. Who cares, etc., etc. And so, we're working on that at the moment to point out the fact. Well, there are actually very few people under the age of 14. In jail anyway.
Yeah, I'm sure there is.
And under 14 is too young.
Yeah.
And there's much better solutions, but it's really hard to get through, particularly with some media outlets that are banging the drum. And so it's satisfying to tell the story of, and actually just point out. I was talking to a journo on the weekend when I was in Darwin, and saying, oh, no, that's not the case up here in the Northern Territory. So it actually is.
I would have thought, to be honest, that would be where it would potentially be a higher issue.
Well, the point is, people have that perception, but it's not true.
Okay.
The stats don't show that. There's still a very few number of under 14, and the same with youth crime as well. Youth crime is not increasing; it's actually going down.
Okay. Oh, that's good.
So the thing is, it's very satisfying to actually just point that out and try to. There are a few media organisations you just got to ignore because they're not going to listen. Mm-hmm. So then you go to others.
Do you find that the right-wing media are more likely to ignore it than the left? Or
and within that, it's one or two papers.
Okay.
Generally, other media aren't. It's basically starts off as an effort to try and sell more papers by fear-mongering and engendering fear. And I lived in towns where that really all started off going. And it is self-defeating because many people in the end get sick of reading the fear, hate headlines because sure, they know it's an issue, but it's not as bad as the editors and the papers are pushing on.
Yeah, sure.
So that's another doing those type of things. It's just satisfying to actually set the picture right and say what actually is the situation.
Yeah.
And there's a risk at that because then you'll have knee-jerk reactions and
sure. Are there places where what would you call it, juvenile crime? Would that be right, juvenile crime?
Yeah.
Are there places where that is more common? Like, is it in a city or like western suburbs of Sydney, or is it rural?
No, it tends not to be. It's fairly consistent in most places. There are some people from certain demographics or backgrounds. Tends to be parents from lower socioeconomic groups that are doing that. But once again, that's not always the case as well. So it's a matter of, it's always a big issue to try and avoid the stigma as well.
Yeah.
And to say, oh, it's because they've got bad parents, or because there is definitely a link between poverty and crime of all sorts, youth crime, and it's not just stealing bread or what have you. It's it's as the classic sort of medieval days. It's there is just a link, and between poverty and crime, that's probably the biggest thing that you can say. But it's your traditional, or I guess the stereotypes of what people have are usually wrong.
And I wonder if a lot of the time those stereotypes have been fed to us by those sort of fear-mongering newspaper types.
Well, it is, and wanting to sell the papers once again and saying, well, this is what the situation is, and it's not the situation. And it is true that there are a small group of young people that reoffend and are largely responsible for a higher majority of youth crime, but on the whole, youth crime is decreasing.
That's good.
And there are very few people under 14 that are which
caught up in the system in that way.
And also got to look at the consequences of sort of vigilante groups that are adults that are causing the problem. There was a guy chasing a car and went to overtook the car and then head-on collision and killed the people in the oncoming car. And that was a death caused by someone that was 21 or something.
Yeah.
So, that wasn't a death caused by young offenders. It was a death caused by people that were trying to drum up the fears and take law into their own hand and do all the rest of it.
Right. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting subject, and like you say, potentially a controversial subject as well, because it can spark different people sort of going, like you're saying, people going, fuck them, they did the crime, they do the time, and then other people going like, whoa, hang on, slow down, there's got to be other options here.
Yeah.
That's particularly if they were a first-time offender, particularly if it wasn't a absolutely heinous crime, things like that. Like, once you're caught up in that system, that's it. You're in that system, It's fascinating. Jumping slightly, but I remember that you were in a movie called The Nullarbor Nymph. For those of you that haven't seen it, tell us a bit about it.
It's quite interesting. I've done a lot of acting on stage, but a few movies as well. There's a friend I met. We were both doing extras on a US TV series on the Gold Coast where we were extras. So I met him, and ended up he lived in the same suburb in East Brisbane, I think it was, and he was also an Adelaide Crows supporter, so we became good mates.
Yeah.
But he was at Griffith Film School, and he directed a lot of movies, and he put me in a couple of them. Don't Show Mother was another, but Nullarbor Nymph, there's sort of like the Min Min Light, one of these Australian myths is the Nullarbor Nymph. And it was a very small part I had in the Nullarbor Nymph. I went camping with my best mate, Pete, and he got taken.
By the nymph.
Well, I got a line in there. They said, they reckon it was a dingo. Fuck, I haven't seen tits like that on a dingo before. So if any of you blokes are out in the Nullarbor by yourself, one piece of advice: watch your cock. Is
that one of your lines?
Yeah, there was a third one as well, but I can't remember what it is. I'll have to go back and listen. So it wasn't my part. It wasn't huge, but it was a fun movie to do.
Yeah.
I mean, I did all my scenes in a hotel room, but it's got some classic themes. Scene where the main guy is sort of does this very MacGyver kind of thing, and fashions like a metal loincloth kind of thing, lined with sheepskin, and stuff over his like cartridge belt over his bare chest, and glues some other stuff together to go and take on the nymph to battle her on. There's car crashes, and they set cars on fire and do a whole stack of things. Yeah, very B grade, but quite.
Yeah, sure.
You can find it on I don't know, whatever streaming service. Not the big ones, obviously. But
Yeah, sure. But if someone Googled Nullarbor,
Nullarbor Nymph, you could find it. Yep. Yeah. And there's also Don't Show Mother was the other one where I had a really great part. This repressed bisexual guy that ended up bashing and raping his employee. So great role.
Wow.
Great role that Matt cast me in that one.
Full on.
Yeah, that was.
Is that the Matt that I know?
Yeah. I've got a few Matts in my life. Yeah, and your your Kiwi Matt.
Yeah.
There's Writer Matt and there's Movie Matt.
Yeah. So
Movie Matt's probably he's the youngest of all of them. He's dark haired, a little bit shorter guy. Matt.
And Ryder Matt he's tall and thin like myself.
Not quite as tall as you, but yeah. He's thinner now. He's lost a lot more weight as well. But,
Okay.
But Movie Matt is Matthew Wilkinson, and his movies are Rob Will Productions. He did those shows. I'm trying to think if he's put me in a good movie. He did another one.
He's getting called out.
He did another one recently, but he's moved to South Australia now, so he tends to, and they're all done on shoestring budget stuff because it's certainly not. Although Nullarbor Nymph did pretty well. We had a premiere in Fox Studios in Sydney because they picked it up. It was picked up by I think Triple M. It was. Yeah.
Okay.
So American Rosso, loved it. So they put their own premiere on one night at Fox Studios. That was funny because the guy who I raped and assaulted in Don't Show Mother.
In the movie, not
the movie, not a real life.
If you're just tuning in, he's talking about a part in the movie.
He was also in Nullarbor Nymph and in other movies. And I actually met his parents at the launch of the premiere, New South Wales premiere of Nullarbor Nymph, and having a great chat with them, all the rest of it. And they're in the cab on the way home. The mum said to Dad, "Oh, well, that guy that raped our son was really quite nice, wasn't he?"
I bet she never thought she was going to say that.
The cab driver nearly ran off the road.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah, so obviously I was a good actor.
Yeah. What a compliment to get.
Well, yeah, I guess so. That I really am a real.
How do you put that in your resume?
I don't think
Great rapist. And then she's your reference.
Good actor, but a really nice guy.
That's brilliant.
It was an awful film to do, though, and I remember just shaking on the set afterwards and like, hated it. And it really was a case of just having to separate myself from the character I was playing and saying,
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
Any aspirations or hopes to do more?
Oh, probably just more theatre, I guess.
Do you prefer theatre?
Well, I'll do anything, really. It's just a matter
$20
of...
bucks?
I don't think I've ever been... I was paid for some of the extras work I did on a kids' TV series down on the Gold Coast. I was on that. I've been paid for a few extra parts. I do have a Internet Movie Database entry, but you usually got to pay to put your entries in there. But all my friends are leaving Brisbane. I'm in a party scene.
Oh, yeah.
And when you're doing extras work, you sort of always keep a little in the corner of your eye where the camera is, You never look directly at it, but you're always just going to make sure you just move a little bit to the left or the right, so you're not
to try and get
so you're
in
not
the shot
stuck behind someone.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Is it true that they have, like, if it was a party scene, everyone's dancing around and stuff, that there isn't actually music playing?
Sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't. Yeah.
It'd be hard. I mean, I can't dance whether there's music or not, but I think I'd find it a lot harder.
But the other thing, if it's meant to be at night, but you're shooting during the day, so there's lots of black plastic around the outside of the deck or the room or wherever you're doing it, so that it's. But then they're going to set that off so they don't get reflection off the black plastic.
Yeah, right. Yeah, very involved.
One of the other things, though, when you're on a movie set is when people are eating or drinking, they don't actually swallow. So you pick up the beer, goes to your lips, and
that would frustrate me.
And you put it down. Yeah,
I can assure you we are drinking.
You're right. The main reason for that is because the levels would then go up and down during each take.
During the takes, yeah. Oh, well, we just need to bring me another one.
So you'd see horrendous continuity things where during different scenes it goes up and down. So you watch, and once you know it, you watch it, and it's like when you're watching movies for the gratuitous extra walk behind, strutting past and not quite relaxed or not quite, or the gratuitous extra looking at the bookshelf or looking at whatever. But watch when people are drinking, because they never actually, or they'll pretend to swallow, but the level never actually goes down.
Yeah, okay.
And same with the food, up to the mouth and then it'll cut away. Or
I see.
And or they'll make sure they don't go back to the plate, so you don't see the quantities going backwards and forwards.
Yeah. One of the things that I always found, it was funny but also annoying, and it was very much a 90s sitcom thing. Pretty much any 90s sitcom, but so take Friends, for example. They'll be sitting at a restaurant, and they'll sit around and they all order a pasta or whatever it is, and a bottle of wine. That comes out, it sits there. They don't touch it. They finish their conversation, and then they go, "Well, we better get to the movie."
Yeah.
And then they get up and leave. It's like,
you haven't done
why
that
did
at all.
why did you even have that in the scene?
In the movie.
Let's have them go to a restaurant, but don't eat anything.
Yeah.
That's what every sitcom was doing, so it must work. Let's do that.
During COVID, I went through and recorded a whole stack of SBS movies, including ones in English. And it's an Elmo's Fire, I think 1985, which I'd never actually watched. And it was a classic movie in that. And I thought, how did pop music go from electronica with saxophones to grunge within 10 years? Clearly, all the way through that was, the Kenny G kind of, sax, electronic, whatever. But I was watching a good thing about SBS, they run credits. And it's good, just there's something you want to, where was it filmed or something else? And you find that in credits. Or in The Simpsons, who the guest voices were.
Yes.
But this, I remember watching the credit all the way through, and then to see this guy wheeling a hot dog van halfway through the credits, I thought, wow, so that was his sole contribution to St Elmo's Fire, was wheeling the hot dog stand during the credits, halfway through the credits.
Wow.
When, maybe 10% of the people or 5% are still watching. I thought, poor bloke, I hope he got paid for that.
He's sitting there with his wife watching it going, my bit's coming up.
My
bit's coming up. Like the credits are starting.
Sit down, don't leave the cinema yet. My bit's coming.
Lock the doors.
There I am. Can we go now?
Yes.
But the other thing is, you have extras and you have featured extras.
Right.
None of them have lines, and then you might get a line as well, which is a different thing again. But the featured extras are so, they think they're just that little bit better because they're a featured extra. And
is that different again from a cameo?
Yeah.
Is a cameo just a way of telling an already celebrity that they're an extra, but it's like, don't call Brad Pitt an extra, he'll lose his shit. Call him a
No, not really. A cameo is just it's beyond an extra or a featured extra. It's a bit part. But a cameo is often someone that just wants to come in.
Yeah, briefly.
For William Shatner in what's Third Rock, that old 80s thing as well.
Yeah.
So they
remember that. Sorry, I just started laughing because I just, as you said, William Shatner. Oh, fucking hell.
Where did your mind go, Matt?
No, I remembered. I don't want to screw this up, but I remembered this joke that before becoming an actor, he was going to open his own pants business called William Shatner Pants.
Yeah, or maybe he could be incontinence pads or something.
Shatner incontinence pads. It's such a fucking unfortunate last name.
It is. But funny with featured extras, they get paid a little bit extra. They still have no lines, but they'll be like in front of the camera or a bit closer up, and they'll get really annoyed. Where Mortified was the kids' TV show, I did extras work down on the Gold Coast, and you can see me in a few episodes. But the director came out once, and decided to pull me towards the front, even though I wasn't a featured extra, but he didn't know that. He just sort of liked the look. And this featured extra got really quite annoyed. So we're waiting to go, and then just about to go, he sort of puts his leg around in front of my leg and then brings his hand down in front of mine and happens to smack me in the nuts as well. And it's like,
wow,
small-minded person.
Because extras don't typically get paid, do they?
Oh, they do. Well, they do in in a mainstream film, but not necessarily credited. Like you won't
sure.
get a credit.
Well, the credit list would be rolling for ages if
But
particularly.
don't show. All my friends are leaving Brisbane. I got a name in that. But
Okay.
Yeah, but not in Mortified. I think I did 6 episodes of that, and but that was fun just to watch the way it's done. It was kind of like a hobby where you get paid a bit for, which was nice.
Yeah.
But just the way they set it up, like there'd be the main house and the neighbour's house, and they're all talking over the neighbours. But then when they went to do any interiors or insides for the neighbour's house, that'd be a totally different set. So the neighbour's house, they'd just be on the footpath and they wouldn't go in because they hadn't arranged it with whoever owned that house.
Yeah, okay, gotcha.
But they found a better house to do the inside stuff. So then you go and move somewhere else to shoot all the inside scenes for the neighbour's house. It was just, all really weird.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and then you go back later to try and pick the houses. Like, oh, wow, they look different.
Yeah, I bet, yeah.
But it's fun to do it. It's, wouldn't mind doing a little bit more. Stage is nice because you have that immediate feedback, whereas a film or a TV, you go and do a lot of work for it and you love it and all the rest of it and you're very excited about it. But it doesn't come out till 6, 12 months later.
And you could be edited right down. Yeah.
And by that point, you've sort of lost your interest and your enthusiasm. Whereas on stage, you love you're doing it at the minute, and you see your friends afterwards that can tell you usually how good you are.
Yeah. So I think it was it just before? Yeah, it must have been like 2019, I guess, before COVID. You were in a stage show here.
We came out of.
Was it?
As we came out of lockdown in 2019,
2020?
2020.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, as we came out of lockdown, they had with limited seating capacity because they had to social distance. Yeah, that was Prime Minister, the stage show. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that was fun. I enjoyed that.
That used to be a great TV show.
Yeah,
Yes, Prime Minister. That was great.
What
was your role in that?
I was the Director General of the BBC.
Can we get a BBC voice?
Then I was also the interviewer as well. It's like, yes. I'm trying to remember a line. It's like, yes. I'm made a blank with the line, but the BBC, it's like, Director General of the BBC, we have no political agenda. I can't remember. I wish I could remember some lines. I should bring some out. But yeah, he was very understated and quiet and poised and sort of genteel, and it was very important that they knew what he was thinking and they respected what he was thinking. And as for all these scurrilous comments about the Director General of the BBC or the BBC not giving anybody a fair go, I have to tell you that is not the way we operate.
That's brilliant. That was very good.
I just wish I could remember the lines. Yeah. But then he was threatened with his salary being cut and all the rest of it. So, no, I really don't think that's necessary. He was a pretty good character. And then I was also the presenter. We're here live at Checkers, interviewing with the Prime Minister on the eve of the summit to discuss the... I can't remember what it was. Yes.
Yeah.
Prime Minister, is it something you... do you deny that it's not... Can't even remember... if I could remember the lines, but that was a while ago.
Yeah. That's cool. It sounds like it was good fun for you anyway.
Oh, it was. Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Yeah. And was it well received?
Well, we did well. I mean, we had a lot of full houses, but that's because we could only have half the number of people in that house.
Easy way to book out a gig, isn't it? During the pandemic.
We had 10 full houses. Behind you, there was 50 instead of 120 in there, but, it was still fun, and we still had good audiences and good laughs, and, and you're able to play up to them a little bit.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. Particularly when you have the drunk people in there just laugh at anything. Yeah. Sometimes they laugh too much. It's like, oh, come on, you can settle down a bit
now. Yeah, you're trying to get the next line out and he's just wetting himself.
Yeah, it is good though when you do a show where they're laughing so much that you have to slow down your delivery.
Yeah, sure.
And then you got to work out what to do so that you're just not standing there like a... and you've got to try and react and yes, and whenever you're ready. But it's a great experience when they are laughing themselves stupid.
Yeah, I bet. And that would be a different style of acting, of course, to screen, because screen are laughing after the fact.
That's right,
and
you don't
months
get
after
that.
the fact. Yeah.
I was in one show once and we were in the green room and I had a big long gap between scenes and I was there with a couple of others reading the paper or having a coffee or whatever, and there was this massive uproar, and I said, "You hear that?" I said, "Something's happened. That's not natural and normal, polite kind of laughing." And so I went up to backstage just in time to be confronted with the guy that was meant to open the third act running down naked. So he just decided he wanted to change the part. He wasn't meant to be naked, so just climbed on stage.
Really?
Yeah. He alternated the role between him and another character, so it was the second last time he was meant to do it anyway. So he thought, oh, and he had friends in the audience, so he thought, right, I'm just going to climb in the window naked. I'm not meant to.
That's cool.
Yeah, the director didn't like it.
I bet.
And that was the last time he played the part, but yeah, it was just... we never saw him again after that scene. And it was, that was the difference, the purely spontaneous laughter of him.
Yeah.
I think also, I know it was a different show where I had two characters. I'm sitting there, change costume into the second character, hearing my cue, page and a half ahead when I'm meant to be on stage. Oh, right. And then I'm get up to go up, and I'm just walking up the stairs and like, hell, I've changed into the character too early. I'm still meant to be the other character.
Oh, shit.
So I'd gone to fully change. So bolting back downstairs, ripping off my
You
clothes.
didn't have stage hands to like...
No, it's amateur theatre. So
okay.
But it was just... so belted back downstairs, ripping off my clothes and hurriedly trying to put back what's the matter? I'm in the wrong costume. So then some people would help me and and I didn't have the complete costume on, then back upstairs. So putting the hair back and it's like trying to put the right costume.
Oh, bloody hell.
But that's the stuff you dream, we have nightmares about. It's like with radio, you something's happening and the record's running out and you haven't got the next one ready, or
You're
their
still in the
anxiety.
toilet and you can hear that song's
Their
starting.
anxiety dreams, or something's happening on the stage, or it's sort of opening night and you still haven't learnt your lines and all this stuff, and you get to the point in the end in the dream, you tell yourself it's just a dream, and then you argue yourself, no, it's not. It is a dream. Okay, this is just a dream.
Yeah.
It's like the ones of being naked in the shopping centres when you're a kid and all those kind of things. It's like you got to tell yourself it's just a dream. And eventually you convince yourself that you're not actually about to go on stage not knowing the words, and the record's not running out the radio station and you're not naked in the shopping centre.
Yeah, yeah. I've always found it funny when people say, oh, if you're nervous, just imagine the crowd naked. Like, I haven't played on stages many times and things like that, and music. I mean, I've never needed to, but I've tried to do that to see what it's like, and I don't know if it's just me or if it's anyone, but I can't just envision a group of people naked. Like, it doesn't work. My brain's not that. I don't know. I'm not that clever.
I think you might be having a higher priority of remembering the lyrics or the chords.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And plus,
partway through, you screw it up, and you're just like, "Sorry, I was just envisioning your dick."
and depending
and
how
it's okay. Like, it's
depending
it's
how
okay.
good looking they are and how tight your pants are, and yours are fairly tight, Matthew, it may be more embarrassing for you. Depending what the crowd's like. I think that'd be very dangerous. Very dangerous.
Very dangerous.
Imagining the crowd naked.
Not recommended protocol.
No. I do.
Is there anything that you do to, if you're feeling nervous or anything?
One big thing is just be nervous.
Yeah.
Get it out of your system. Be nervous.
I agree with that, actually.
Yeah. And and I mean that's come from a number of areas, but also it's come from my GP when it comes to issues of anxiety. It's like, okay, just own it, feel it, let it go out. If you don't, then you start getting anxious about being anxious, or you start getting nervous about being nervous, and it just gets worse and worse. If I'm doing something on stage, usually I find sort of when you knock off work late afternoon, 5 or 6 o'clock, when you get home and before you go to the theatre, that's when I find I'm most nervous, and it's like, cool, just be nervous, get it out of your system, feel it now. And don't be scared about being nervous.
Yeah.
It's natural. It's normal human being thing to be about.
I think I definitely agree with that. Like, it's and this is easier said than done, but it's not something to be afraid of. Like, you might not like the feeling or the sensation of being nervous, but that doesn't then therefore translate to you're not going to do well. You know.
Yeah.
I know that with gigs, I could go and play one right now. I guarantee I'll be nervous for the first song.
Yeah. Yeah.
always. But as soon as I've played that first song, unless it goes really bad, which I think it's happened, but it hasn't happened many times. So then the second song kind of becomes the first song again. But so long as the first song goes okay and it's at least somewhat received, then my nerves at least drop to a really, really manageable level.
Yeah,
but I've always got to start with a song that's easy, because then I can do it while still being nervous.
I mean, the good thing is it's the first song, so it's the one they're going to remember the least anyway.
Yeah, this is true.
Yeah, but being in the wings, particularly if you're an opener on stage, was quite nerve-wracking. But for me, it was just have that first line in my head, because you're standing there thinking, I'm going to go blank, but something, right? Just have that first line in your head, and it's
the rest will flow.
Yeah, and it's quite true. I did Taming of the Shrew with a good friend, and he was the one that actually directed Yes, Prime Minister, and we were openers, and you'd have a manic warm-up where just to get yourself hyped up, you'd go through your lines in a manic kind of way, but we would do it in the style of, we called it the Royal Punjabi Shakespeare. Oh, goodness gracious me, Fred Licio, is it possible that fair Bianca does find you me? Oh, no, way out of hand. And we would do this in the wings while we're waiting to go on, and the rest of the actors all trying to be all so serious and focused, and and they're looking at us. It's like, we're the openers, let us do what I want.
Yeah, exactly. You've got to do what you've got to do.
But it was great, and we just go through our what we're waiting for. And Queensland audiences can be a pain in the bum as well. They can be 5-10 minutes late, and it's horrendous. So we'd just be going through our scene, in the style of the Royal Punjabi Shakespeare. Yeah. And it was great. We said, no, friend Licio, I tell you, she bears you fair in hand.
That's brilliant.
And I still remember the lines from that because of the humour in it, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so the humour helped you remember that, like it locked it in more, because you can still remember that.
But when we got on stage, we did it probably.
It wouldn't be great though if you went on stage and you're like, oh shit.
No.
You look down, there's an Indian family sitting there like, go on.
You're no. I did have some. It's funny, we had when we did Taming of the Shrew, we also had a whole range of visiting, I think, Korean people. For some reason, they kept coming to the shows and couldn't understand a word of it, but would sit there listening, absolutely rapt, because not only was English as a second language, but it's also, Shakespearean English, which is not what
it's a second language to me.
Exactly, yeah.
Third language.
And you'd see them in their own, they're just staring, rapt in the whole thing. It's like, I could say anything and it wouldn't matter.
Oh, wow.
Probably wouldn't matter to most of the English-speaking language, audience who has English as a first language.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shakespeare, I could never get into it as a kid, and I've never tried to as an adult. But school subjects or whatever, having to read it or learn about it or whatever, and it just written down. I mean, I'm not a strong reader anyway, but that sort of thing where it's like, hatheth doeth, fuck offeth. It's so over my head. I'm like, just talk normal Shakespeare, you fuckhead.
Well, I think the difficulty is poetry and plays aren't meant to be read.
Yeah.
Sorry, aren't meant to be read on the paper like a book. Mm-hmm. Poetry's meant to be spoken, and plays are meant to be performed.
Yeah.
So I think our English curriculum's got it wrong. You don't appreciate poetry by reading it on the paper. You don't understand a play by reading it on the paper. You understand a play by watching it being performed. You understand poetry by hearing somebody read it.
Sure.
I mean, a classic case in point, I think, is Romeo and Juliet. Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet. That's all classic Shakespearean script, but you watch that movie, you understand it. Because it's acted and it's performed and it's brilliant. It's the best Baz Luhrmann film.
Is that do you mean when I say new, but like the 90s one with Leo?
96 with Leonardo DiCaprio and Claire Danes, Claire
Danes, is it?
Fairly sure it's Claire Danes, but
I saw that way back then. I haven't seen it since. But I remember thinking like, if they did other Shakespeare movies Shakespeare plays into movies like this, I'd probably watch them.
Yeah.
Because it could, as a teenager then, it spoke to me because it was Leo, and he had a gun.
Yep.
And it was cool. Like they added a cool element to it while still keeping, which also made it very weird and sort of arty, but not so arty that a teenager couldn't get.
No, and the Capulets and the Montagues, the rival families, that all came.
Yeah, that's right.
through
The
it.
gangs, basically.
And Baz Luhrmann stylised it, but it was just very. I remember watching it and just blown away. I thought it was going to be a classic, pouncing around in tights and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
Hello there, Romeo. But no, it was just full on straight in. And,
I might have to watch that movie again, actually.
Oh, I love it. I've actually got it recorded from.
Have you got it on VHS?
No, I've got it on my set-top box.
Oh, do you? Okay.
Which I still can't work how to get things off of them. I have to watch it from the box, but it's
Okay.
I've got it there, and it's really what a play is meant to be performed.
Yeah.
And if it's performed well, you understand it.
Yeah, true.
And it's and even if you don't understand every single sentence or every single bit, you understand. You get the general gist,
That's right. By the end of it, you understood.
Yeah.
You understand what's happened.
Yeah.
At least enough to get the message.
And the soundtrack in that, it is just...
It is a good
epitome of
Yes.
late 90s
Yes.
pop, sort of grunge, thematic, intense, and it's...
That was the best music anyway, I think.
Whenever I'm doing radio, I still go back to that soundtrack and pull out,
cool.
as many of the songs as I can to play. Usually you're told what to play, but you can choose your own sort of one song every now and then, particularly with information and current affairs type radio. There's not much music on it, only 3 or 4 tracks, but, when you're allowed to put your own in, that I'll go to those because they're just brilliant tracks in the late 90s.
Yeah, exactly. I'm trying to think of what songs are on it. I do remember it being a good sound.
Yeah, there was Garbage and Desiree
Maybe
and...
Stone Temple Pilots, or
I think so.
Yeah.
And Loving You, the young male soprano. There's just some brilliant songs in there. And the love scene where they see each other through the fish tank. And there's the big party song, Young Hearts Be Free. Yeah. Young hearts be free.
Is that in that?
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, right. Like I say,
And
I haven't
that's
seen
a revival,
it
I
since the
think. I don't
mid-90s.
think that's a cover. I don't think that's original. But yeah, that's just. And the scene where he gets banished and he's out in this sort of caravan in the desert, and it's a great soundtrack for it.
Yeah.
And the trouble is, it gets easily forgotten. I guess it was 1996, so it's going back a while.
Yeah.
But it's not as forgotten as much as perhaps Crowded House, because that was also the era they put out their best of, and everyone was buying that. There's still some nice stuff in there, but
Yeah, I've never been a huge Crowded House fan. There's some songs that I don't mind at all. But
and you a New Zealander, man.
Yeah, well, see, this is the thing. Like apparently I have to like them, but most Australians say that Crowded House are from Australia anyway.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like the two, the Finn brothers, they're from New Zealand, but it was split ends.
Yeah.
And then they came. My understanding is that then they came over to Melbourne. I'm pretty sure it was.
Yeah.
And then at that stage formed Crowded House. So if it was formed in Australia, then they're an Australian band.
Yeah. Yeah.
But Kiwis are very wary of Australians saying anything like that because you took Pavlova, you took Farlat, you took there's other
Matthew
things.
Pratt.
Yeah. There's other things.
But, Australia is very imperialistic. You're in New Zealand, and New Zealand media has a lot about Australia and Australian politics and Australian story. New Zealanders know a lot about Australia.
Yeah.
Australians know bugger all about New Zealand.
Very little.
Yeah, we get very little news about New Zealand.
Yeah.
Occasionally you might get Jacinda Ardern, or is she still the...
I think so. There's the school teacher.
Oh
Honestly,
yes. Every now and then you'll get a little story, but
Yeah.
as a rule you don't get. And it's
if
it's
it was something
imperialistic,
big, like when the Christchurch earthquakes and stuff like that, if it's something big. But I mean, the thing is that was broadcast around the world. So little old New Zealand shaking again.
And off it goes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
You
and
want
it's a crying.
whiskey?
If you insist,
I do.
It's a crying shame, and it's really,
What's that?
if Australia gets sick of, the US or UK or whatever else trying to dominate
Yeah.
Australian media or politics. Just look at what we do to New Zealand.
Yeah, well, yeah, this is true. I don't have any ice, I'm sorry. One day I'll get some.
It looks very...
But personally, I like it with a dash of water. You have it however you choose.
Yep. Sounds good.
And grab more when you want it.
Spray river...
If you need a
side.
break too, just let us speak in it.
That's
If
fine.
you need a toilet or whatever.
Chat.
There you are. Cheers.
Well, yes, toilet could be the only thing that
Yeah.
stops it.
Yeah, yeah.
I better put in a dash of water.
Yeah, fuck, I don't know why I just had that straight. I definitely need water. But, yeah, I don't know.
Particularly if it's a single malt, yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
It's a... Whoa, there we go. It's a Speyside single malt Scotch whiskey. Bourbon cask finish. Which I find interesting because it's from Scotland. It's Scotch whiskey. So they must have brought a bourbon cask over from the US just to
okay.
put it in, I guess.
In the States.
Yeah.
Thinking we wouldn't notice. That was another thing. In radio, we used to... There was one show we did on Friday afternoon. We would have somebody from a restaurant come in and bring in the food from the restaurant. And we'd go...
Oh, that's a fucking smashing idea.
It was great. And
That's a smashing idea. Let's organise that.
So you do your Greek, Thai, Vietnamese, and it was great.
Yeah,
You just the whole gamut. And you choose, a restaurant that's really good at it.
Yeah.
The only trouble is you had to make sure at least one of the presenters had their mouth empty at each time.
Oh, of course.
It was radio. Only one person at a time. So I was producing at the time. It was like, yes. One of you stop eating. We need to talk. One of you've got to talk. The guy was a bit... one of the presenters tried to push the boundaries, and he had a Greek restaurant in one night. Totally deadpan asked the woman, said, of course, I get home late at night and I often like to have a snack in bed. And I do like Greek food, but I do have a problem getting tzatziki off the sheets. And he said this to her. And she was... said, I'm not sure. I guess you could use a spot remover or, fabulous or whatever. She didn't pick it up. And it's like, yes, I do have a problem getting tzatziki off my sheets. And we're just in the... I said, Peter, move on.
And she didn't pick it up?
No, I didn't at all.
That's funny.
And same as this. Only one person can sip at the same time. Someone's got to talk.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
Or at least there is video with it.
Well, the good thing is that this, it has video and it's not live, so that's what the edit button's for, if need be.
The cough button.
Yeah, the cough button.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do remember camping with you once, and I had a Crowded House CD on in the car, and you went and took it off.
Did I? Yeah. I hope I would have let it at least play a bit, but then eventually I would have been like, fuck, come on.
That was camping at the Mighty Imble campsite.
Yeah.
That's
changed
not what
quite
it
a
used.
bit.
Not what it used to be. No.
It's a real shame. It's a real shame. That was such a good camp spot.
It was almost like semi-bush.
Yes.
But now it's, No, I went there, and we actually ditched the last day and gave up the payment for it and went somewhere else because it was nice enough, but not what it used to be. And sometimes but it wasn't even a case of you go back a second time. Because, I'd been back 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times, and every time had been really good. Yeah. But, this last time I thought, no.
We did a New Year's there one time as well there was a few of us, Shane, Mike.
I remember...
I want to say Toto, but it could be
because there were the kids that used to come down the side of the tent.
Yeah.
And usually I'd be up sort of early in the morning with the paper and the coffee and whatever.
Yeah.
But not this morning.
I remember.
And the kids were just playing around the tent, and they just woke me up, and in the middle of the morning, I think it was, crack of dawn or crack of noonie.
It was about the crack of noon.
And you guys out the front.
The rest of us were up.
Yep. You guys were sitting around the campfire, probably getting into your...
Yeah, I'd say we were having a breakfast beer. Yeah.
Yep. And all of a sudden you hear from the tent me go, fuck off, kids.
Yeah.
Kids, can you, please...
it was, would you kids back off? And then it was like, because we were chatting and stuff, we were like,
And then I realised because
just
the
tell his kids to
Tourette's
fuck
kind of. I mean, sorry, kids, could you please go away?
Yeah, it was good. And they did.
They
and we
did.
didn't see them again. So it
Oh
worked.
no, they did come
It
back.
did, oh,
again.
did they?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
It's like from one of great lines from the last Thor movie is Thor tries to make these great big speeches, and it's like, yes, and we will go and we will rescue the kids and we will bring them back and we will have a great feast. Not with the children, of course. We won't eat the children. No, that's a part of our dim, dark past that we don't talk about anymore.
Does Thor have... I've never seen any of the Thor movies.
I saw them because Nick, my partner, loves them. So we went and watched all three on Netflix or whatever. And then went and saw the fourth in the cinema. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It was quite good. It was... is it Chris Hemsworth?
Yeah, I think-
Thor? Yeah. But, he's always trying to make these...
They asked
Big-
me, but I was like, I've got to do the
You
podcast.
got to do the podcast, I know. Yeah.
So they're like, fuck, all right,
And
Chris.
and you've just, you bulked up
Well,
for
exactly.
that last
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah.
You just lost
Camera
it and got back.
can't see it, but-
Yeah. But he tries to make these big, valiant, noble speeches and just pretty hopeless at them.
Yeah.
The last one actually had some really strong same-sex themes in it. It's the rock guy, played by a New Zealander with a New Zealand accent. Appears that he had two dads, and there's another character. I think the Valkyrie, the women comes from a long line of they're all women's, and so there's lesbian themes coming through with that. Set the Conservatives up in arm. They weren't happy.
I bet.
Yeah, which is good. We like to upset the Conservatives.
But Thor was God, wasn't he?
Yep, Thor was God, but they've
What
also
the Conservatives doing watching that anyway? It's blasphemy from the outset.
yes, worshipping idols and all of that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
exactly.
But one thing about Conservatives, they tend never to be terribly consistent.
Yeah, this is true. They're very good at cherry picking.
Yeah, like they'll get really upset about that they often like schools of the same gender, so that the young men and young women aren't being tempted to get
That's-
involved with the other
yeah.
sex, but they forget the fact they've then gone and put 500 young males all together.
Yeah,
and that
at school camp.
that might go against their purpose.
Yeah, exactly. That's right.
Yeah, but I think there was when it comes to fundamentalism and conservatism and sense and logic, they don't necessarily match up.
Yeah, exactly.
No.
What do you think of our new Prime Minister, old Albo?
Well, it's great. I mean, the polls that came out yesterday, I hope Peter Dutton stays in the position he is for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
17% approval rating.
17.
Yeah. And Albanese's jumped up at 55%.
Okay.
There's a lot of undecided. There's about 25% undecided in there, but yeah, doing well, and particularly on the world. Who would have thought we would have had a married Asian lesbian mum as our foreign minister, and trotting around the world stage everywhere, including Pacific Island nations, Asian nations, Europe, New Zealand, and being totally respected and accepted for who she is.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's great.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, it is.
So made some, and also just some other practical things. Hit the ground running. I can't believe how they do it all and where they get all the energy from.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's my side of politics, so
Yeah, exactly.
of course I'm going to be happy with that. And
Yeah.
my partner got involved in, sort of voted actually for the first and second time since meeting me.
Did he?
But yeah.
Oh.
And he finds Albanese quite attractive as well. He likes older.
Really?
Yeah.
Albanese.
And he wanted to ask him the
Nick.
secret of how we lost weight.
How he lost weight.
And he was determined, and I went to a couple of rallies and events, and I'd come back and he'd find out Albanese was, damn, I wanted to go along and ask him how he lost weight so we could find out for you, Mark. It's like, thanks, Nick. I appreciate that. Yeah.
That's fucking backhanded. I love it. Well done, Nick.
Yeah,
That's
although
brilliant.
I don't know if he'd be happy with a skinny Mark. I probably would be, but yeah. I think the Prime Minister losing weight aside, this government's done very well, and it's going to continue to do well, particularly when the opposition the former government is performing so poorly.
Yeah, exactly.
And the stuff that's coming out.
Oh my
You would have
God.
thought a Prime Minister would just go and sign himself up.
Sign himself up for 5
and
different...
and not telling the people that were actually in that portfolio.
But what I don't understand, was ScoMo doing that for the sake of power or for the sake of manipulating how those different...
He said it was, a response to COVID. People expected him to do something, so he did. I don't think anyone noticed, though.
Yeah, this is the thing. Like, if
he did something, the whole of the Australian population didn't realise that.
Yes, and also, why would you keep it quiet if you were saying, all right, in response to COVID, I'm going to take on some more responsibilities, blah blah. That's big noting yourself. You would definitely do that.
Yeah.
This why I think, like, was it so that he could collect the salary from each of those as well?
Can't even see the logic of it, and I don't think anyone can or knows why. But
Yet again, a Conservative being caught out. What a surprise.
Yeah. But those things aside, getting through Parliament in one of the first moves is, carbon emissions reductions, things like that. Hitting the ground running and doing some really strong stuff, and even practical things like putting extra staff on to pay for a service you pay for with government, like getting a passport.
Yeah.
You don't get that service, and that seemed to be the mentality of the previous government. Yeah, we'll charge you what you like for it, and then we might deliver it if you're lucky. There's still waiting lists for a lot, but for me, I got it quite quickly, the passport. So responding to that and saying, hey, there is actually, we need to put more staff in here, and we need to make sure this happens.
Yeah.
So I think some of those things. And even, electricity prices, they were caught with that all of a sudden, then all of a sudden intervening into the electricity market and saying, okay, put things on hold. We're going to trigger this mechanism and stop the prices going ridiculous amounts.
Yeah.
Prices. So the range of little things that I'm... Yeah.
I'll be interested to see what they do with regards to working with other state governments to help with the housing crisis. Because, I mean... You and I are both fortunate in the sense that we own our own places. Well, I mean, we've got mortgages, but we're not renting. But obviously a lot of people, that's not the case with them. And renting at the moment is just whack.
Yeah.
It is whack. Like, the prices are through the roof and there is a huge shortage.
Yeah, and it is a state responsibility.
It's state responsibility, but I feel like the federal
and certainly Kevin Rudd
Rudd
at a federal level intervened with a whole range of federal government initiatives to help with housing. So that can be done again. The difficulty is that even at a state level, the state government has the money and the budget for it, but they just can't build them quick enough. So last financial year, they underspent by about 300 houses. So they'll catch up. The money's still there. It'll just be spent later, but people need the housing now.
Yeah.
So it's they haven't talked about it as a big priority as yet because it's not really something they campaigned on or saw as an issue, I guess, before the federal election. But it's something that they may well jump in and realise that they need to do something about.
Well, I think before the next election, I would think that they'll need to be.
They would
being seen to have it as a it's been red flagged. It's something that we're addressing.
The difficulty is there are a lot of things that are catching up since coming to power.
Yeah.
Interest rate. My interest rates have now gone from 600 a month to 1,050 a month.
Yeah, it's crazy how much they've gone up.
Now I just got an email yesterday. Yeah.
Is yours all fixed?
No, mine's...
I mean, sorry, is it not? Is yours... Sorry, I mean, is yours not fixed?
No, it's not fixed,
Okay.
Well, it's fixed at 2% below the variable rate, but that's still, means it's gone.
Yeah, they've gone up a heap. Gone up a heap.
But hopefully that's going to be the peak and it'll start dropping soon. If the Reserve Bank thinks they've got the economy under control and it's not overheating.
Well, exactly. I mean, I'm by no means an economist or anything like that, but I would have thought that the risk could be that, if you keep pushing them up too high, people start, getting foreclosed, right? The houses get repoed or whatever, because they just can't afford. They could afford $700 a month, $800 a month, or whatever, but now it's $1,200 a month, and it's like, well, I don't have that.
Particularly if you're in Sydney.
Yeah.
And Melbourne, where you've got $1 million property,
Yeah.
which is not, that's an average property.
Yeah.
Ours are a lot less than that.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Mine's gone up heaps, though.
Yeah, the value.
Stoked about that.
Yeah, the value of mine has as well.
Yeah.
And thankfully the mortgages are relatively lower.
Yeah.
So it's still, tough having to pay an extra $400 a month on the interest for on my loan. But if I was in Sydney, it'd be $800 a month.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's right.
So it's manageable, but for many it's not. So hopefully it's at the peak of the curve, and maybe it might be one more rise, and then we'll see that start coming down.
Yeah.
If the Reserve Bank thinks it's crazy, because they do that to try and slow down the economy because they think it's overheating. But then the trouble is it also pushes up prices, so it increases inflation. So it's like, it's really hard to make sense of it all.
Yeah.
And it is something that's out of government control as well, because it's the Reserve Bank. During the Keating era,
Do they not have a? Does the government not have?
no, it's
say
a
in that?
totally independent decision from the Reserve Bank to set the base interest rate. Yep. And that was what happened in the 80s under Hawke Keating. It was freed up banking system, floating the Australian dollar, letting in foreign banks and doing a whole range of other things as a free market economy, instead of being a controlled, where government set interest rates, government set the rate of the dollar, government set a whole stack of things.
Yeah.
So now really the only control is the base interest rate set by the Reserve Bank. But once again, that's a decision that's made by the Reserve Bank and not by government. So that's all in the name of free market economy that Australia sort of went through in the 80s, 90s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's politics. I find interesting. A lot of people don't, but whatever. I don't care.
But I
about
mean,
a lot of people,
our parents' time, the price of milk, the price of bread was controlled.
Yeah. Because food has gone crazy expensive.
Yeah.
I didn't notice
bread,
until
milk,
recently.
all the majors were controlled by.
Yeah.
There's a building around the corner from my place which is called Bread House,
Yeah.
and that used to be, it's now run by a private boarding school's now taken it over. But there were big industry bodies, and then ultimately, with government influence, that would control the price of bread, the price of milk, the price of everything. You couldn't buy a newspaper on a Sunday because newsagents weren't open, and you weren't allowed to buy them anywhere else but a newsagent.
Yeah, right. But there's some things that were the way back then that I'm pleased that they're not. Like, for example, you couldn't go to the pub on a Sunday, or
exactly.
they closed at like 3 p.m.
Or even
something
buying
stupid
petrol.
like
You
that.
couldn't buy petrol after 6 o'clock at night, or after midday on a Saturday, or at all on a Sunday.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's our parents' generation. Vaguely remember bits of it, but it's not. Yeah, we're glad that's not around. And even supermarkets, they weren't allowed to open after 6 at night, and had to close at midday. And
It still annoys me that here, like in Queensland, that you can't buy booze in the supermarket. That still annoys me, and I've been living here for like 14 years, but it still just bugs me.
yeah, it's weird in
There's always a BWS or a whatever, really Lickland or whatever, really close by, but it's like, I still have to go into another shop. I still have to swipe my EFTPOS card again.
through the hassle of it.
It's 2022. Like, just let me put it into my trolley next to my meat and my dog food.
The ACT is the only exception, because their thinking was no. In fact, ACT had prohibition for a while, like the US, back when they were soon after I think at 1920s. I think they had their centenary last year or whatever. Or maybe it's soon, but when in the early years that they were founded, they had prohibition, so no alcohol for a while, and then when they opened that up,
politicians were like,
I think once more politicians started going, they thought, how are we meant to survive in Canberra without it? So they started opening it up, but then they decided, no, we don't want pubs to be in control of selling takeaway alcohol, so they gave it to corner shops. So you can go to your fish and chip shop or wherever, and you can buy a 6-pack. Only in Canberra, but nowhere else. Yeah, in Northern Territory, you can walk next door to it. Like, they'll have the sliding grill door, and it'll be like a shop next door.
Yeah, and
you can actually, for some things, if you've just got bread and milk, you can take that through, and you can pay for that with your 6-pack or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah, if they can scan it, but it's still very limited.
Yeah.
And the NT, you've actually got to show your ID because there are some areas where...
That was what amazed me when I was in the Northern Territory was, like, we were getting ID, but not because we looked too young.
No.
We were getting ID because they were checking how much alcohol we had already bought.
Oh, they were checking to make sure you didn't live in an area where alcohol was restricted.
Yeah, because there are alcohol bans in certain parts of the territory.
Yeah, in certain communities
yeah.
and what have you. So that's really... And even when I was there on the weekend, that's still having to scan my ID, even though they look at it's Queensland, they still had to scan it. And there's also a banned register as well. So
right, so because if you get caught taking alcohol into a dry zone or selling it to people who have been banned, then you'll end up on that ban list.
And also, if you've been, you can have court orders if you're caught by, I don't know, drink driving or other unsocial stuff or whatever, where it's quite extreme, you'll be banned from being able to buy it.
Yeah.
So.
But the thing, I don't know, like personally, I think that is a pretty old school, heavy-handed type of approach. It's a bit of a Band-Aid on a bullet wound.
Yep.
You know, it's like, all right, time out, like, you know, take the PlayStation off the kid sort of thing. It's like, you're not addressing anything here.
Yeah.
Because you're all you're doing is creating a black market and pushing it to whatever, to gangs or whatever, or pushing it to moonshine.
Well, that's also the difficulty with the basics card, where for people on Centrelink benefits.
Oh, yeah. Is that a real thing? Have they started that?
Oh, no, that's been going for years.
Oh, okay.
The current government's, the new government's getting rid of it.
Oh, fuck.
So where a certain amount of your
I didn't realise that it was
Centrelink income goes on, and it's only been rolled out in certain areas where a certain amount of your income goes onto that card, and that can only be spent. There are things that can't be spent on. It can't be spent on booze, cigarettes, and porn, but that's I don't know who buys it these days anyway, because it's free online. But and other restrictions. But you know, it comes up with a whole range of embarrassing situations with that, and it cost a bucket load of money for the government to run it as well.
Right.
And it's not addressing the cause or the root cause of the problem, and that's the difficulty. And you know, it was a bias in places it was rolled out. When I was in Townsville, every now and then there would be a big story up in arms about 2 or 3 itinerants that were in the local park that might get too pissed and have a brawl or cause antisocial behaviour, and it was like, oh, something's going to be done. No. It's like, hold on, how much money are you guys spending on the night safe precincts, which is millions of dollars, keeping mostly drunk white males safe and stopping putting them in prison? If you spent a fraction of that amount on this issue for 2 or 3 people, maybe once a fortnight, where you're spending millions for a couple of hundred or 1,000 or more people every Friday and Saturday night. But because it's white drunk males, it's not an issue.
Exactly.
Yeah, but because it's 2 or 3 itinerant people that aren't, then it's such an endemic problem. Well, no, it's not. Where's your perspective?
Because it hasn't been addressed.
And it's the same it's the same with the Valley, the night safe precinct. The money that is spent on, not necessarily all white, but certainly middle class.
Predominantly white. Predominantly white.
Your middle class, fairly affluent, whatever. It's not your down and outers. But people fail to see the amount of money that is spent on on privileged sort of class.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But get up in arms if by seeing 2 or 3 people lying, not even drunk, maybe just sleeping rough in a doorway. Oh, that's horrendous. Something needs to be done about that.
But a lot of them will sleep in those parts of the valley, like through Brunswick Street Mall and stuff like that, like around Mickwerthers and that sort of area, because it's part of the safe area, or what's meant to be the safe area. They are actually safer sleeping there because it's all under constant
video
security surveillance. It's not just being recorded so they can watch back on it later. There are cops watching screens constantly. It's been ages since I've been out in the valley, and particularly at night time.
I find it hard on Friday, Saturday. There's virtually no nightlife in the city anymore. It's all the valley. It used to be,
all of Eagle Street Pier's getting redone.
But even like, Victory and the Exchange and the Criterion and all the places up in the city. It used to be going out on a Saturday night would be spread across the Valley, City, South Bank.
Yeah.
Still a little bit at South Bank, not much in the city, but it's all now
West End?
concentrated. Even not much there
Yeah.
either. But yeah, it used to be there. Now it's all really concentrated in the Valley.
In the Valley, yeah.
I live nearby, and if I'm walking home, you've got to walk about 3 blocks out of your way just to avoid the crowds and because it goes Warner Street, Bellows Street that way. Although I probably should walk through Chinatown. There's never anyone there now.
Oh, Chinatown got ruined like probably about, I don't know, when it was 7 or 8 years, or maybe not that long, 6, 7 years ago, when they redid it. They gentrified the hell out of it.
Yeah.
And made it look like just, it's not a Chinatown. It's just an extension of Brunswick Street Mall, but with nothing.
But it's dead now.
It's got nothing in it.
I should walk down there instead of going 3 blocks the other way.
Yeah.
There's never. Oh, you might have a queue from Birdie Num Nums coming up through there, or 1 or 2 other places.
Birdies, shit, I haven't been there in a while.
No, I haven't been there for a
But I haven't even been to Finn's because I live so far out now. But we used to go to Finn's quite a bit together and have a few
afternoon.
beers and
Although there's Sunday happy hour.
We should do that again soon though.
We need to. Yeah, we need to. It's still there. It's not so bad it's good during the week, particularly if there's a show on at the Valley Music Hall or somewhere else.
Yeah.
That brings a few more people around.
Yeah.
You still have a few colourful characters, and it's great watching people. And it's going to be warming up again soon. You won't have that wind that's whipping down the mall.
Yeah, exactly.
Still needs more trees, I think, but.
What's the deal with that Legalise Cannabis Australia party and Pauline Hanson's seat?
At the Senate, really interesting results. Across the country, they were pretty well the same, where you would get Liberal and National would get 2 seats in the Senate, Labor would get 2 seats, and then the fourth were Greens, and the final seat, the seat number 6 was up for grabs, and Hanson got it. Hanson Party got that 6th seat in pretty well every state, but right behind them was the Legalised Cannabis Party.
That's crazy.
They got about 80%, 90% of the vote that Hanson got.
Oh, man.
Very interesting because it was a half Senate election, which means only half of the Senate, so 6 seats in each state, 1 in the ACT, 1 in NT.
Yeah.
So it went down traditional lines, 2 for each of the majors, 1 Green.
Yeah.
But the Legalised Cannabis Party came very close to knocking Hanson off for that.
Damn, if only all their other supporters weren't at home on the fucking billies.
Oh no, they rocked up 3 weeks later. Yeah, it's like, oh, sheesh, I was meant to do something.
Was it too late, man?
Was it last Saturday or?
Just let me do it now.
Saturday before? When were I meant? Oh well, there's always next. No, next year is it? No, 3-4 years.
Yeah.
So it was quite an incredible result for them.
I certainly wish that it was legalised. I think that
because it's
and I just think it's absurd that something like that you can get in legal trouble for smoking it, legal trouble for possessing it.
But it's also not only legalising the substance, but because medicinal cannabis is legal in many states, but it's also then working out the ramifications for that, driving under the influence. Once again, in our parents' generation, they had to work out what was the safe level of alcohol you could have in your system to still drive safely. Yeah. So that's the next big question when it comes to marijuana and cannabis is how much can you have in your system and still drive safely? And at the moment it's 0. So if you get detected,
exactly, that's the problem. Is at the moment it's 0, but yet it stays in your system longer than heroin, longer than cocaine, longer than meth, longer than any of them. Marijuana stays in your system the longest. It stays in your system.
I'll take your
for
word for the
11
other
days.
ones, Matt. I wouldn't.
Oh yeah.
But because marijuana apparently is absorbed into your fat.
Yeah.
Whereas alcohol is your blood, your kidneys, and it passes out pretty quickly. There is one state or territory where there has been legislation that's trying to regulate how much you can have in your
It'll be
system.
the ACT.
Yeah, it probably is.
Yeah.
To work out how much you can have in your system and still drive safely.
Yeah.
But
because when I say it stays in your system, I don't mean that you're affected by it.
you're not stoned. It's just in there.
You're
There's
only
traces of
stoned
it.
for
Yeah.
a few hours or whatever,
Yep.
but it's detectable for 11 days. So they need to figure out a way, I think, of detecting: are you currently high? Are you currently stoned?
And that's the same with the alcohol.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. Basically, they are able to say, like, well, if you blow above this, then you're currently affected by alcohol.
And that was a big debate. Once again, our parents' generation to work out, first of all, how much was safe and how to measure it. And even still to this day, it's okay if they come up with that in your breath, that's an indication, but then they've then got to take you to the roadside bus or back to the station and take a blood sample to actually measure your blood, because the breath is only a...
It's an indication.
That's right.
Yeah.
So that's the things to work out. And I remember, because my dad was a science teacher at Alice Springs High School, and that was all a part of the debate in the Northern Territory to work out how much, and as it was at every other state and territory, because it's something at their level. And that means it would also be so much harder if there were that legalised cannabis did get 6 senators in, then it's still essentially a state issue. So it'd be very hard for them to... drugs and alcohol to try and influence that down to a state level or not.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
But I wonder if, because of how close they got, if it will help the likes of Labor, and Greens have always been pro. But if it will help the likes of Labor and stuff, be like, all right, maybe this is what the people do want.
Well, the Greens, and once again, a huge result in Queensland. Queensland elected 5 Labor MPs to the lower house and elected 3 Greens.
Yeah.
So that's...
very close to 50-50.
That's a big... And also big surprises out in conservative western suburbs of... Brisbane's really weird. Most other capital cities in Australia, the western suburbs are the dodgy ones.
Yeah.
Not in Brisbane, the western suburbs are the silver tail, blue ribbon, whatever. But, they even elected a Greens person.
Yeah.
The Tory tree huggers, as they're called. But the Greens had every inner city seat. So, they ring-barked Brisbane, which is not a very good thing for Greens to ring-bark anything, I wouldn't think. But they did manage to do it. So, with 3 Greens... federal MPs in Queensland, 2 Green senators, a Green state politician, and a Green councillor. Queensland, and who would have thought Queensland? Wild, crazy, conservative Joe era Queensland.
Exactly. We're just a cowboy state, aren't we?
Now have 3, 5, 6, 7 Greens members at all levels of government. Which I don't know if it's a good thing or not. Who knows? Because it's still the old adage: the Greens can promise the world, but to deliver it is always a bigger issue.
Yeah, sure.
And that came up again in Parliament this week. They actually introduced a bill to increase the age of criminal responsibility, so the 10-year-olds aren't sent to jail. But it got totally defeated because every other party voted against it.
Right, voted against changing it. Or, to increase the age.
That's right, yeah.
Pauline Hanson was probably like, make it fucking 8.
Well, thank goodness we don't have any. That was a funny thing, though. There was an election a Queensland election where Queenslanders, we have to own up, it's Queenslanders, 11 One Nation MPs into Queensland Parliament.
Oh, no.
Out of 89.
Really? I think I drove past one of I know that every day I drive past a staunch supporter. His house was just covered in everything from little hand-sized placards to big billboards that if he paid for them himself, he's nuts. But surely the party offered him money to use his yard. But so much, all you saw was just this yellow everywhere. You couldn't read any of them because they were just billboard on top of billboard.
I think which year it was, 98 or something. And I remember I was in Sydney before phones had internet. So I kept going down to this internet booth, putting my $2 in and checking the results from the Queensland Electoral Commission of Queensland, and just the number of seats that were going to Pauline Hanson's party, and they got 11 in the end. They all of a sudden fell pretty quickly soon afterwards because there were people that They might know how to mow a lawn, but didn't know how to be a politician.
Yeah.
And to learn how to be a politician, they brought
Pour concrete, but can't spell it.
they brought Joe Bjorky-Peterson in to teach them how to be politicians.
Yeah.
In Parliament, and then they just rapidly fell and crumbled. But Queensland has a history of that, of voting in a massive number and big landslides, and then rapidly falling. Yeah, that happened with.
I wonder if that means that we're sort of perhaps a little bit more easily swayed. So someone comes along, they're like, "Oh, I've got an idea, I'll fucking sort it out," and we're all like, "Yeah, that guy, get him."
Yeah, there's certainly the knee-jerk reaction, and also Queensland doesn't have an upper house as well, so it's all relies on just the one chamber.
I see.
It means the public service and Senate and the parliamentary estimates are a big influence in politics in Queensland. But certainly, there is a big knee-jerk thing. That was the Campbell-Newman thing where ALP were reduced to a Tarago party where the Tarago has more seats than they did at the time.
Yeah.
They had 7, but then the next election, massive landslide back to Labor and kicked out Campbell-Newman, and they got 49 or something. So,
Right.
yeah, Queensland is certainly very volatile when it comes to politics.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's, as was shown in the last federal election, 3 Greens Senate, three Greens lower house compared to 5 the Labor lower house. And
Yeah, it's almost an even split. How many Liberal?
Liberal National, it's roughly about 12, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. I'm trying to remember how many you actually have in Queensland, but it's fine. The election was won in the other states, whereas Kevin Rudd's election in 2007, it was Queensland that really won it.
Right.
But not this year. Considering only 5 Queensland lower house MPs, we've got 3 fairly high-profile ministers. So Queensland does pretty well. I wouldn't say kicking above its weight, but certainly its representation when it comes to federal treasurer and aged care minister and an assistant minister. So 3 out of 5 Labor MPs have a portfolio, which is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
That we know of.
Yeah.
They're not doing a Morrison.
There might be more.
Yeah. As far as the shadow portfolios by the opposition, who knows how many they've got,
Yeah.
Yeah, they might have 6 each. But we only know about 1.
Do you think that Anastasia is a shoo-in to keep her job? I honestly thought, sorry, before you answer that, I honestly thought that she was going to leave and take the Olympic Committee president job.
Yeah, certainly Stephen Miles, the deputy premier, is getting a lot of attention now. But Anastasia Palaszczuk was the accidental premier. She was the leader of the opposition, the ALP opposition, with those 7 members in 2012. And then the next election, a massive, they're saying in 2012 it's going to be a generation before we see a change of government in Queensland. It wasn't. It was one electoral cycle. The next cycle, Campbell-Newman was kicked out and Anastasia was premier. So second generation politician. Her dad was a Polly, never a premier. She's been in for quite a while now. So it really depends how long she wants to stay around, and maybe she will hand over to somebody else before. I mean, Queensland's got a reasonable tradition of handing over, because Peter Beattie handed over to Anna Bligh, and then Anna Bligh won in her own right. She's not showing any signs of being tired or wanting to give up. It's certainly spreading the weight around and the love around with Stephen Miles as Deputy Premier and a few others.
Yeah. I just thought for sure she was going to effectively resign or, pass on the torch.
After the last election, yeah.
Well, no, but when she was earmarked to be the president of the Olympic Committee.
Yeah, I mean, it's still possible.
I mean, that guarantees her a job for at least 10 years.
Yeah.
She's not going to be premier for 10 years.
Yeah.
The Olympics are here in 10 years' time. So, and then after that, should probably be about retirement age.
Probably. And there are a few long-termers now that came in that when Newman was kicked out, that would probably be considering their future at the next election as well. Some ministers, some quite senior, that are actually older than we think they are, into their 60s. So they may be... So we're due for another election state election
next year, I think.
the year after next, because they're now fixed 4-year terms.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
So we'll see what happens, whether she will stand again or not.
Yeah.
I think it will really depend if there's somebody else strong in the wings that they think has. And Stephen Miles is trying to build that.
Yeah.
Cameron Dick as treasurers, they're all being given a lot more of a portfolio, but it just depends how popular people think they are, I guess. Yeah. And Miles is certainly coming across as very much the blokey. It's a classic thing at Labor Day last year where he was talking about the Prime Minister off at some expensive fundraiser or whatever, where everyone had to pay thousands of dollars, and he said, "Oh, here we are here," and he was meant to say, "What a contrast," and it's like, "And what a and it was beautiful.
What a cunt! Wouldn't it be good if his mic just cut out?
But
so it was actually contrast. But what a cunt!
Well, that's what did happen, and he did. It was actually a catch in the throat or whatever. It wasn't deliberate or intentional, but that's the way it came across. And of course, the whole party faithful lapped it up. At that point, and so that helped. He certainly's got that little bit of a smile on his face. So who knows? Maybe they're trying to groom Stephen Miles.
Yeah. In your broadcasting years, I wanted to ask this before, but that's right. We can jump around. Who would be, not necessarily the most famous? Well, actually, yeah. Who would be the most famous person that you ever interviewed or got to chat with, and who would be one that you had, and you might not want to answer this one, but if you do, then that'd be cool. One that you kind of had to talk to, but you were like, I don't want to. I don't like this person. He's a tool.
Well, he wasn't a tool, but...
and you can't put me in that.
No. Barnaby Joyce, he was slated, but we were on a program that finished and came off air at 9 o'clock. Mm-hmm. So if he wasn't there, we can't interview you. It's another program. It's another thing. So we were so he had a plane with his group. He was flying. I was in Renmark, and he was flying up from Mount Gambier, and he was scheduled for 8:30 or 8:35 after the news. And it's getting on. He's not there. He's not here. And it's like, if he's not here by 9 o'clock, we just can't do the interview.
Yeah.
So we interviewed him. He got there in the end. It was like about 7 minutes to 9.
Oh God, really?
Yeah, and flapping around in the corridor, and it's producing. He needs to come in. Yeah. Oh yeah. Sorry, I'm late here. It's my fault because this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you got a few minutes just.
Yeah, I don't regret interviewing him, but it was just annoying that he didn't see. Stephen Marshall. I didn't interview him, but I was producing. He became the premier, but he was opposition leader, and he came into the studio, and once we'd set it up, here's the microphone, he sat down opposite the presenter and just pushed the microphone away. It's like, we're doing an interview with you for radio.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I put it back and said, that needs to stay there so people can hear you. Oh, sorry, I didn't think of that.
Fuck me.
It just comes up, I'm not used to doing this. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. No, we can tell.
Tip to self, future radio interview, leave the microphone there.
Yeah. You want to be like full public figure. Get used to talking into these
That's
things.
it. You need them. Yeah.
That's crazy.
In terms of famous people, when I was 13, I interviewed Kamal.
Kamal?
He's this Indian, Sri Lankan actually, Australian singer. Why are people so unkind? Dilmati. No, you're still looking lost.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he was, and had all
I mean, 13, when you were 13, I wasn't, or maybe I was like 1 or 2 years old or something.
But everyone loved him. Once again, our parents' generation.
Yeah.
I think Dad knew him from uni, maybe even because he's South Australia. Yeah, but he says, he was in Darwin, and I wanted to interview him. Why not? I'll interview him. So I rang up the casino, Mindle Beach Casino, and asked to speak to Kamal's manager. He didn't have a manager, but they left a message for him, and I thought, won't hear anything. And before mobiles or whatever, and he rang back home when I was out and got my sister and said, hello, this is Kamal. My sister's like, oh, yeah, come on, who is this really? Oh, no, I'm sorry, it is Kamal. I'm ringing for Mark Jeffery.
Wow.
So rang him back because I didn't even leave a number, actually. I remember he rang the community station, and they gave him my home number, and
Someone just calling for this teenager, and they're like, yeah, here's his home number.
But it was very
keeps the key under the mat.
kind, and it was great. I had a great
bedtime
interview with him. In terms of, I enjoyed interviewing the lead singer of Hunters and Collectors.
Oh yeah,
yeah, he was great. But even more, I enjoyed going to the.
Remember his name.
Mark. Enjoyed going to the pub after with him.
With him, yeah. Nice.
And sitting and chatting with him for about an hour or so, just over a couple of beers.
That would have been cool.
He was.
Why can't I think of his name?
Yeah, it's Mark somebody or other. Yeah, maybe that's why I liked him so much, because he had a good, cool name.
One of those really unique, cool names.
Yes, like Mark. Yeah, very rare. As I said, missed out on Peter Garrett. I would have loved to. Mark Seymour. It was in my head, Mark Seymour, but I didn't want to get it wrong. No. So thank you, producer, Mark Seymour.
Yeah.
Because Peter Garrett's got a really tragic life, actually. His mum died when he was a teenager in a house fire, and Peter Garrett couldn't save her and couldn't rescue her, and heard her die essentially. Then got involved.
Fuck.
Yeah, horrendous story. Then got in.
Listen to Beds of Burning really different.
yeah. Well,
I shouldn't say it.
I know it's very very dark, but
that's where my head went.
Well, that's essentially she was in the bedroom and
Okay.
The sounds of screams and whatever. The reason I mention it because that actually he then went and sort of found answers with church youth group areas in Sydney, which were passionate and idealistic people, and then moved into environmentalism and all the rest of it. So I just love to talk to him about, is that really horrendous event in his life, was that really, I guess, what got him involved in chasing idealistic and strong, passionate dreams,
Yeah.
How much of an influence did that have? And also, then when he finally got it to be a minister in government, he couldn't do much. So, I'd love to talk to him his story about that, because he's still a passionate, and plus some of the best concerts I've seen is him. So I just love to have that conversation with him. I got so close to it, but somebody else was presenting the program that day, so I ended up interviewing him when his biography came out. Missed him. So I think who else I'd really love to interview. I love the job that Richard Fighter does and stuff, and now with other people is just those long form interviews on ABC, where you can have a really good chat for an hour and find out where they're at and where they've come from.
And that's kind of what I'm trying to and hopefully achieving with this podcast on obviously a much different scale. But
I'm not quite up there with Peter Garrett.
No, but just with the idea that it's not an interview, it's a chat. And hence why we're having a beer or whiskey, and it's called Chats with Whiskey. And two, that it can go for as short or as long as it needs to. But if an interview, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, but a chat, a conversation, it needs time.
Yeah.
It needs time.
One of the funniest interviews I had was with Kevin Bloody Wilson.
Oh, really? That's cool.
And he was coming to...
KBW?
Yeah, he was coming to Renmark. And it's ridiculous. I then had to go and edit the interview and just say Kevin B. Wilson. Even at the beginning.
Really?
Yeah.
But that's his stage name.
Well, we did it live, but then they said, just after a while come back to it. But anyway, he...
Kevin Bleeding Wilson.
But he was... Kevin Bother Wilson.
Kevin Bother.
Goodness gracious me, Wilson is with us this afternoon, or this morning. But he
bleating out the word Kevin.
He had some great...
That's like the Karen for me.
I think Kevin's probably more offensive than the word bloody, isn't it?
Kevin.
But he...
Sorry if you're a Kevin out there and you're listening, but that's,
Yeah, he was...
Dean Poll exists.
He had some great one-liners. Like, I did a show at an old age home the other day. I don't know if they liked it or not, but they certainly pissed themselves. And he was the last interview before the show finished, and so he and I then just sat sat on the phone and just telling each other jokes for about half an hour.
You and Kevin?
Yeah. I wished I'd kept the tape running because it was just funny. It was like boom, 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 boom.
That's
boom,
rad, just having a bit of phone banter with KBW.
Yeah.
That's cool.
But it was a semi-serious interview as well because
He's still touring too.
he is. He's still going. Yeah. He was saying, I'm not like Slim Dusty. I'm not going to put out 100 albums, but
Yeah. His Christmas, he's probably got a few, but the Christmas one that I always.
Won't you buy me a fucking bike?
Yeah.
Please, Dad. Please. Yeah. Oh, is it Dad or
Please
Santa?
Santa. Yeah, please Santa.
Won't you buy
Where's
me?
me fucking bike?
Yeah, I always think though, radio stations on May the 4th need to all get together to make sure we don't hear the Star Wars theme every second hour. Yep.
And they all think they're so clever.
Yeah, that's so original.
And all the presenters like, May the 4th be with you.
That was funny the first year.
That was funny, Lutzy.
Yeah.
I know, Kebo.
And also December 21, which is a better song, which is Who's Going to Make the Gravy by...
I find that song hard to listen to.
I know. And it's a brilliant song, but it's hard to listen to. But it's even worse when you hear it on every single program. It's,
Yeah, you can't hide from it.
No, because it's a real tough song. But I mean, he's brilliant. He's just
exactly, and it was meant to be a tough song.
Yeah. He's really that's Australian poetry, and that's where we have the best poetry in Australia at the moment. It comes through with songwriters, like him, because it's just great. You get excellent lyrics, which is that's the best way we see the imagery and modern themes that come through poetry in that point. The other thing is on Anzac Day is that Eric Bogle song and the band played Waltzing Matilda. Like, come on everyone, get together. We don't want to hear it 16 bloody times throughout the day.
Same with the God help me, I was only 17 or 19 or whatever it is. Like a important song, a good song, whatever. But just like any song, if you play it constantly,
particularly when
it loses its
dealing
meaning.
With really rough. Heavy.
Exactly.
It's sort of, you become inoculated or anaesthetised to it and you don't actually get the... Yeah.
But I think that there's heaps of good political war or conflict-based songs that could also be played. Like, okay, they might not be specific about Anzacs, but Sunday Bloody Sunday by U2.
Yeah.
Play that. That's all about conflict and about bombings and stuff like that,
And it's interesting, and the band played Waltzing Matilda, Eric Bogle, is actually an anti-war song. It's not really... Yeah, it's crazy. Just to help try and... So we don't get... And also, Mother's Day...
anything by fucking Bublé.
Or Scissor Sisters, Take Your Mother Out One Night. That song.
Take
your mother out one night. Great song, but we don't want to hear it 6 bloody times all day. Yeah.
What would be a Father's Day one?
Anything
AC/DC. Anything AC/DC.
Yeah.
But I'm
To Her Door.
Oh, yeah.
Not a very, realistic Australian song. Yeah.
To Her Door.
Yeah. That's like a single.
Cats in the Cradle.
The single dad. Yeah, Cats in the
and
Cradle's positive.
Father and Son.
Yeah.
I mean, Father and Son's are sad. That's
sad. Well, so's To Her Door. It's like, the divorced dad, whatever, trying to,
Yeah, like he wasn't good enough.
Yep. Oh, there's that really tragic song, Babe, Daddy, Don't You Walk So Fast from the 70s. I remember as well, which is when the dad's leaving, wakes up one morning and the 6-year-old sort of sees him leaving. It's like, it's sort of big shivers. They're all...
I've never been able to write a deep song like that.
Oh, you wouldn't be able to. Writing it, Wayne Newton, and writing it's one thing, but performing it,
oh yeah, exactly, that'd be hard. There's a song called "Daddy Doesn't Pray Anymore" by Chris Stapleton. It's such a good song. It's very, very deep, but like lyrically deep. But it's a very basic song, basic structure and stuff like that. But it's really nice. I've gotten really into Chris Stapleton recently.
Okay.
Yeah, like it's country, but it's not yeehaw down the farm country.
Yeah, I think it's actually really quite sad when we're talking about the songs to do with dads. A lot of them are about failures of dads, I suppose. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, this one's about his. I assume
Not all
his
of them,
dad.
but
yeah. But this one is about his dad dying, or at least who I assume is his dad. Yeah. It's about a dad dying at the very least. But yeah, it's just the lyrics to it are really good.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's heaps and heaps of songs. Oh, shit, man, I'd never thought about that. But you're right. There's heaps of songs that are about how beautiful and wonderful and powerful mum is or sister is or whatever.
Apart from your mama, we won't mention
that. Yeah, your mama's so powerful.
Yeah, I don't think on the top of my things to do list. Yeah,
your mama's so beautiful. That undone word.
No,
but you're right. But the dad sort of ones are about them leaving or
not
dying
being around,
or being abusive or alcoholics or whatever it might be. But it's more of a negative light. I can't think of one. There probably is one.
Yeah,
but I can't think of one that is about like my dad is the shit. He buys me things. He's always at home at dinner time.
He did get me that.
Doesn't smell like gin.
He did give me that bicycle at Christmas.
Yeah.
Daddy the best. Yeah.
And when I broke the window, he didn't punch me in the head.
Yeah.
See you in the NT.
Yes.
Oh, the See You in the NT.
I've got their stubby holders and various things like that. I think that's real, like super clever marketing, super clever.
When I lived in Alice Springs,
business.
the granny flat I lived in, there was a woman with the NT Tourist Commission that used to work for them, and I still want to call her because they disavow it, say, no, it wasn't official, it had nothing to do with us, but surely they must have slipped some seed funding somewhere to make that happen because it's certainly taken over from Daryl Summers. If you never go, you'll never know.
Yeah.
Yeah. That ran for donkey's years, but See You in the NT.
Where the bloody hell are you?
Yeah. Oh, that's right. There was Where the Bloody Hell Are You in between.
That was for all of Australia though, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That was Tourism Australia.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Where the bloody hell are you?
Which is a bit better than throw another shrimp on the barbie. I don't think anyone in Australia actually did put prawns on the barbie until that campaign.
I mean, first of all, we don't call them shrimps.
No.
And I mean,
because
having barbecued prawns is not uncommon, but if you go to a barbecue and there's prawns, more than likely it's like pre-cooked, obviously not raw, but cold in a bucket of ice.
Yeah, exactly. You wouldn't put them on a barbie. No, I don't know.
Oh, another shit. Was that from?
Well, that was
what's his name?
Paul
Hogan.
Yeah, Paul Hogan. Yeah. That was the big advertising campaign in the late 80s. Once again, you weren't born, I'm sure, but yeah.
I was born earlier, 82.
Were you? Okay.
Yeah, because I turned 40 this year.
Okay, that's right. We had your.
You were at my 40th. Yeah. Let's find out. Let's have a few more whiskies. Hey, speaking of friendship, thank you for being mine. I love you dearly, and thank you for being on the show. Would love to have you back if you'd like to, and good luck with that political career.
Good to chat with you. We've had many conversations like this over the years, but this is the first one that's been recorded.
Yeah. Can't take it back.
Don't you call me that?
Cheers.
Cheers.
Love you, buddy.